All right, everyone, buckle up. Because what just unfolded at the recent G7 summit wasn't a diplomatic meeting. It was a geopolitical train wreck. If you still think the West is a unified front, think again. This year's G7 wasn't just chaotic. It was a full-on collapse in coordination, trust, and vision. Let's start with the optics. The tension between French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni practically leapt off the screen. Side eyes, whispers, forced smiles. The moment they sat down, it was clear. Nobody in that room was playing on the same team. But forget the body language. Let's talk about what the G7 actually produced. Nothing. No trade agreements, no unified strategy, no roadmap for the future, just photo ops, political theater, and one huge, gaping vacuum where leadership should have been. And while the summit was already on shaky ground, then came the Trump twist. Donald Trump stormed out, quite literally dropping the US-UK trade deal proposal on the ground. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer bent down to pick it up. And what did the cameras capture? A blank sheet of paper. That's right, blank. No terms, no commitments, no plan, just vibes. Economists scrambled to screenshot the moment. Political analysts were left speechless. Because that image, it summed up the entire summit, a complete nothing burger with global consequences. Now, this might all sound like elite dysfunction, but the fallout is real, and it's already underway. Take Japan, for instance. Their economy is hanging by a thread. A trade deal with the US was supposed to be their life raft. Instead, they left the summit empty-handed, and in deep trouble. Japan is now facing a triple economic crisis. Auto tariffs from the US, 24 to 25%, threaten to gut their export industry. Inflation is surging, the highest among G7 nations, and they're drowning in debt, limiting how much they can raise interest rates. The Bank of Japan is stuck. They're trying to fight inflation by selling bonds and slowly raising rates. But here's the catch. Higher interest rates could strengthen the yen, and that would hammer their exports even harder. It's lose-lose. And with Trump's aggressive tariff stance about to kick in July 8th, Japan and other G7 exporters are staring down the barrel of a full-blown export collapse. Now let's listen to Trump's own words, because what he said is chilling. We'll just send you a letter saying what you're going to pay. Otherwise, you don't have to do business with us. This isn't diplomacy. This is a global ultimatum. Trump doesn't just want better trade deals. He wants to remake the global economy around American leverage. And countries like South Korea, Canada, India, they've been left dangling. No deals, no protections. And if Trump's Security Council meeting back in Washington leads to what many suspect, a shift in sanctions, tariffs, or worse, the entire global economy could be rocked within days. Here's what's at stake. If the U.S. goes back to Liberation Day tariff levels, as some are calling it, average U.S. tariff rates could hit 22%, consumer prices could rise by 1.5%, and GDP could shrink by another 1.5%. That's not just bad for Americans, that's catastrophic for every G7 nation that exports to the U.S. If you rely on the American consumer, you're in trouble. And it's not just a Western problem. The East is moving fast. China, they're quietly letting the yuan weaken, making their exports even more competitive. So while Japan and Europe are struggling to sell to the US, they're also getting undercut in Asia and the global South. It's a double squeeze. And what did the G7 do about it? They talked about critical mineral supply chains. But talk is cheap when China controls 70% of the world's rare earth production and nearly all the refining. The West has no plan, and worse, no leverage. And just when you thought it couldn't get more chaotic, Trump openly blamed G7 leaders for kicking Russia out of the G8. He said, and I quote, "You wouldn't have a war right now if Russia were still in." He even claimed that he warned about this back when he wasn't even in politics. This is a bombshell because the entire G7 identity is built around resisting Russian aggression, and Trump just bulldozed that narrative. He wants Russia back at the table. He's not pushing for more sanctions. He's telling Europe to go ahead without the US. And he's not wrong that sanctions are expensive, but to Europe, this is betrayal. He's turning G7 unity into a Burger King strategy. Have it your way. Just don't expect us to join. Now let's zoom out. Trump wants to isolate China with tariffs while demanding that U.S. allies submit to those same tariffs. And he wants Russia re-invited into the global order. None of this adds up. And it's already hurting the U.S. economy. The Fed's June manufacturing index dropped to negative 16, far worse than expected. Trump's strategy of forcing domestic demand through global tariffs, it's not working. Because consumers aren't dumb. They don't want to buy more expensive American goods. They just stop spending altogether. And that's exactly what's starting to happen. Meanwhile, Europe is trying desperately to stay relevant in this power shift. They want to counter China's dominance over rare earths, lithium, and cobalt. But here's the problem. China spent decades building these supply chains. And they didn't just invest at home. They poured billions into the global south. Take cobalt. China will control 46% of the global mine supply by 2030. And it's not coming from China. It's coming from the Congo, from Indonesia, from New Guinea. How did they secure it? Loans, investments, bilateral agreements. Over the next decade, China is expected to pour $7 billion into Congolese mining operations alone. The G7? They're still writing press releases. So where does this leave us? The G7 is fractured. The US wants a full-blown tariff war. Europe wants more sanctions, but doesn't have the muscle. Japan needs a deal, or else. and China is quietly taking over the world's economic plumbing. You can't fight a trade war with press statements, you can't beat supply chain dominance with sanctions, and you definitely can't rebuild global unity when the most powerful player at the table keeps flipping it over. So here's the question I leave with you. Is the G7 already dead? Functionally, politically, economically? And why is Europe so obsessed with trying to contain China when they don't even control their own mineral supply? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash the like button if you found this breakdown helpful. Subscribe for more raw, real geopolitical analysis. And drop your thoughts below. We want to hear from you because this story, it's only just beginning.